EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and these are 5 cards that I think should see some more play in the Commander format. Just some cards that I come across in my travels, and I think, hey, these cards should probably see more play. How come I don't see it in the Commander format? So I'm giving it a little bit more recognition. So for example, starting out at number 5, Blessing of Leeches, 2 and a black, enchantment aura, enchant creature, and has flash. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life, pay 0, regenerate enchanted creature. So I recently came across this card in a Deck Doctor video that I was doing on my Patreon, and I was embarrassed that I actually wasn't familiar with this. I'm a big fan of regenerating in the format, and this is a card that is doing it better than just about any other. I'm also embarrassed that I missed this on my 10 card series, right? If anyone's new to my channel, I had a 10 cards you should be putting in your Commander deck series that I did, and I went through all the cards and somehow I skipped over this one. It is a card that I suppose can be easily missed, but let's break down exactly what's going on here. First of all, it has flash, which is great. Any card is better with flash on it, obviously, because you can cast it at instant speed. Particularly good here, though, because you are using it to protect your creature, so you can make one of your opponents waste a removal spell with this, right? Now, the downside of this card, at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life. That is essentially nothing in the Commander format. Losing 1 life on your upkeep is no big deal at all. It is highly likely that that's never going to become an issue, and of course, then you can just pay 0 to regenerate enchanted creature. I had to read this card over like 3 times. Then I had to look it up on Gather to check the ruling, and I was like, wait, you can just regenerate your creature whenever you want, just at any time? So someone cast a board wipe, I regenerate. Next opponent cast a board wipe, I regenerate. My next opponent cast an Infernal Grasp, I regenerate. You can just continually regenerate your creature. Now, I should point out, when you regenerate a creature, you have to tap it, okay? So there is a little bit of downside there, I guess, but boy, is it ever difficult to get someone's creature off the table if they have this on it. Obviously, exile effects will work, but I would say regenerating covers the majority of the removal in the format, and then obviously taking damage in other ways, like from combat, also gets covered here as well. If you just want to be attacking with your commander all the time, and you don't want to be worried about losing it in combat, it becomes blocked, you pay 0, regenerate it, and it stays on the table, and if someone immediately casts a removal spell, pay 0 again, right? You can just keep doing this forever. I look at this card, I'm just thinking, am I missing something here? Because this seems really good for protecting your creatures. Next up, another black enchantment aura, Necro Synthesis, 1 and a black, enchant creature. Enchanted creature has, whenever another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. That's pretty good, but also gets even better with this last ability. When enchanted creature dies, look at the top X cards of your library where X is its power. Put one of those cards into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. So now you just get to look at the top however many cards of your library, pick out the best one and put it into your hand. A lot of commanders probably want to be using that if you want to be putting counters on your commander. If you just want your commander to be dying, possibly. I can think of a couple commanders like Nadir and Elenda, which are 2 commanders that you probably are okay with them dying and also are putting counters on themselves. So this can be used in a bunch of situations. I want to be putting counters on my commander. I want my opponent's creatures to be dying all the time, right? I'm in that theme where I just expect a lot of creatures to be dying. I guess mine or my opponent's, either one works great. Even if I'm in that aristocrat strategy where I'm sacrificing my creatures all the time, I'm going to be putting a ton of counters on my creature, and then I can sacrifice that creature as well. Look at the top however many cards of my library and put something into my hand. Even if I just have a commander with a really big power, I'll throw out that new Yargle and Multani creature. That's a funny one that just got spoiled recently. Has an 18 power, right? So if I put this on that commander, I think it's a pretty good include there. Even if I have no counters at all and my opponents are likely going to want to kill it, I get to look at the top 18 cards of my library and put one into my hand. That seems pretty good, right? So there's a lot of things that are advantaging you here with this card, whether it be putting counters on your creature or you want creatures to be dying, but just being able to look at the top however many cards in your library and put one into your hand seems pretty darn good. This seems like a great card in a lot of decks. Next up at number 3, Telluria West. It is a land, enters the battlefield tapped, and you tap it to add a blue. So already we we have a land that obviously you got to play in a blue deck. It's going to be giving you the color of mana you need though, right? So it's mana fixing you even though it enters the battlefield tapped. So for me, if I'm putting this in a deck, it's not that difficult for me to take an island out of my deck and put this in instead, I think. But the reason you want to be putting in your deck is because of the transmute ability, one of my favorite mechanics of all time. 1 blue, discard this card, search your library for a card with the same mana value, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle. Transmute only as a sorcery. So of course, you're looking for a card with the same mana value, and Telluria West has a mana value of 0, which is very, very interesting. So first of all, this is a great way, if by some chance you have a card in your deck that is mana value 0 that you really, really want. Maybe you have a Jeweled Lotus in your deck, you want to go get that, right? You can tutor to go get it with this. Maybe you got that Pact of Negation, right? That is a 0 mana value card. It's a counterspell. You can go tutor for a counterspell with your Telluria West. There is 433 cards in the Commander format that have a mana value of 0 that you can go get just in a mono blue deck alone with your Telluria West. But of course, that includes lands, but that's where this becomes extra good in my opinion. This is land tutor in blue. That's where this card's fantastic. Maybe I want my Academy Runes. I can now tutor for my Academy Runes, which in a mono blue deck or in a lot of different color combinations with blue, that can be difficult to do, right? Maybe I want my Blast Zone because I'm in that mono blue deck and there's an enchantment on the table that I can't get rid of. Blast Zone's a great removal option. Of course, I don't need to get into all the fantastic lands in the format. We already know that Telluria West is a land tutor because of course lands are always going to have a mana value of 0. So this is just a really neat way in a blue deck to tutor for some other land that you really, really want. And I'm sure a lot of decks have lands that they really, really want. I'm really shocked this card doesn't see more play in the format. Coming in at number 2 is Radiant Performer. 3 red, human wizard, 2/2 with flash. When Radiant Performer enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, choose target spell or ability that targets only a single permanent or player. Copy that spell or ability for each other permanent or player. The spell or ability could target each copy targets a different one of those permanents and players. This card should probably be in a lot more decks, and in fact, I think it's probably an auto include for a lot of decks. And the reason why is because of that copy ability thing. And again, I recently saw this in a Deck Doctor video, and so I'm giving my patrons here more credit for coming up with this. This was in a Zira the Golden Sting deck. And now why was it in there? Well, Zira says, when it attacks, put an egg counter on another target creature without an egg counter on it. When that creature dies, if it has an egg counter on it, draw a card and create a 1/1 black insect creature token with flying. So what you want to be doing in this deck is putting egg counters on as many creatures as you can, whether it be your opponent's or yours, right? Because whenever those creatures die, you're getting an advantage off of it. Radiant Performer should be in every single one of those decks. And the reason why is because it's essentially just copying your commander's ability, right? You're going to attack with your commander. It's going to put an egg counter on target creature. And because of course it's only an attack trigger, typically you're only going to be able to use it once a turn. But with Radiant Performer, you flash it in, you copy that ability, you target a spell or ability that targets only a single permanent, which your commander is doing, and you're going to copy that ability for each other permanent in play that it could target, which is every other creature. So what this is going to do is put an egg counter on every single creature in play, which is fantastic for you. Mathis Fiendseeker is another commander where it sort of has a similar ability. At the beginning of your end step, put a bounty counter on target creature an opponent controls for as long as that creature has a bounty counter on it. It has whenever this creature dies, each opponent draws a card and gains 2 life. So again, this is a commander that's kind of slow, right? You're only getting this ability once per turn, and this is a great way to copy it. On your end step, you're going to choose target creature an opponent controls to put a counter on it. You're going to flash in your Radiant Performer, copy that ability, and this is going to put a counter on each thing it could target, and it could target all your opponent's creatures. So all your opponent's creatures are going to get a bounty counter on it. Again, I just think it's an absolute slam dunk in that deck. So look at your commander decks. If it's red and your commander has an ability that you probably want to be using a lot more than maybe just once a turn, Radiant Performer might be an absolute fantastic card in that deck. And lastly, today I'm going to be talking about Campfire. Again, a card that I've talked about a a few times on my channel before, and I just don't understand why more people don't play this card, and I'm bringing the receipts this time. This was one of my best cards from Baldur's Gate, and specifically the reason why is because of the second ability. So it's a 1 mana artifact, pay 1, tap, you gain 2 life. That's okay, I guess. Pay 2 mana though, and tap, exile Campfire, put all commanders you own from the command zone and from your graveyard into your hand. Then shuffle your graveyard into your library. So the reason why I love this card so much and why I think it's so significant is because it is getting your commander out of the command zone. And there's just a lot of commanders in the format that you need out of the command zone. You need them in your hand, like a Phage or a Hakon. And name is one, which I have a deck. Any of the Myogens as well. You need them into your hand in order for them to work. That's why a card like this is really, really important in the format, I think. However, it's not just doing that, right? Remember, this is also returning your commander from the graveyard as well, which you might want to be doing. This can just cheat commander tax if you want to be doing that. But the reason why I really think this card should be in a lot more decks is because of Elixir of Immortality, okay? So Elixir of Immortality, very popular card in the format. In fact, it's in currently 49,000 decks on EDH Rec. Campfire is only in 3,900 decks. Big difference. I realize that Elixir of Mortality has been around for a lot longer, and I realize it's probably in a lot of precons and stuff like that. Honestly, it's one of those cards that I've seen in the format since the beginnings of me playing this format, and I could never understand why so many people use it. Are you really terrified of being milled out? Maybe, I don't know. Pay 2 mana, tap, you gain 5 life, and shuffle Elixir of Immortality and your graveyard into owner's library. So typically, this is going to protect you against getting milled out. I think that's why most people use it. Again, for me, this is one of those cards that I just can't believe how popular it is in the format because I don't think it's that great. I mean, I don't think the gain 5 life is really that important. So if you just want to be shuffling your graveyard into your library, I think there's maybe better ways to do it. And Campfire seems like one, right? How is Campfire just not entirely better than Elixir of Immortality? It's doing essentially the same thing. It also gains life as well. In fact, you can even gain more than 5 life with your Campfire if it sits in play for a while, but it is shuffling your graveyard into your library. It's a 1 mana artifact that shuffles your graveyard into your library if that's your concern, right? So I'm just throwing it out there. All the people out there with Elixir of Immortality in their deck, can't you just swap out Campfire? Isn't it just better because it's also going to put your commander into your hand and cheat some commander tax or return your commander from the graveyard if need be? Like, isn't it doing the exact same thing? Maybe more? I guess Elixir of Immortality shuffles itself into your library, which means you can possibly use it again at some point. But again, I mean, unless there's a very specific reason you need to do that, unless you're terrified of being milled out, I don't think that's usually going to be an issue. I myself have never ever seen someone cast an Elixir of Immortality more than once in a commander game, so I don't think that's the case. Look at your deck. Do you have Elixir of Immortality? Is Campfire just a strict upgrade? I think in a lot of cases it is. Surprised this card doesn't see more play in the format, but that is it. That is all. 5 more cards that I think should see more commander play. And if you are thinking of purchasing any of these cards, I have a TCG Player link. It is in the description below. Feel free to give it a click. It helps support the channel. But that is it for today. Thanks for tuning in.